Now that we've been able to see that our standard programs can use these shared libraries, let's start taking a look at the locations and how we can configure additional locations for our shared libraries. Now, although there's no real need at the moment, I've logged in as the root user, but I'm going to need this later on as I start creating additional content. Our standard locations for our library modules can be in the lib directory. So if I go through to /lib or through to /lib64. However, on a CentOS 7 machine, these library locations, and in fact a lot of the directories that we would normally find at the root of the file system, are now symbolic links. So if I move through to the root of the file system and just show you what I mean, if I run an ls-l, so let's get a long listing of our root file system, we can see that the bin directory, so /bin, is in fact then a symbolic link to USR bin. The lib directory through to USR lib, and the lib64 through to USR lib64. And the same thing we can see with the sbin directory. So even though in a traditional Unix and Linux environment, the /bin, /lib, /sbin directories would be separate to USR bin, lib and sbin, etc. Now they've just been pushed together into the one structure. So really anything that we used to have in /lib is now going to be in /USR/lib. They're pointing through to the same location. So our modules that we're going to find, if I go through now, it doesn't really matter which directory I go to for a shorter path. I just go to /lib. So we can see then when we look at pwd. But if I go pwd and then go through and look at -P, it then shows me that I'm actually in /USR/lib. When I run then the ls here, we can see then that we've got a few files, but mainly it's pointing through to subdirectories, and of course in these subdirectories I can then have my modules. If we want to configure different locations, then we can go through and do so using the cd /etc/ld.so.conf, and we've got an extension directory, so ld.so.conf.d. When I look in here, we can see then we've got some additional configuration files, and they will specify paths to directories that contain additional library modules. Now if we want to create our own new directory, let's go through and put in mkdir /USR Unix System Resources, and anything we add ourselves should normally go in the local directory, and it's the 32-bit module, so I can put it in the lib directory here, and we're going to again go through and we'll put our own directory in here. So let's go through and put Pluralsight. Now what we can do is if I go through and copy from my root directory, so cp, I've got a library module I've created in here, and let's go through and root and then libdisplay uid.so. So this is a module that's got some functions built into it, and we're going to copy this across then through to our last argument. Of course, the last argument is the directory then that we've just created. So if I now run ls -l, we'll get a long listing then again of that directory that we've created. We should see then that we've got our library module in there. We just make sure that we set the executable permission on this, so I can then go through and do a chmod +x, and I can stay with my last argument, so we can then go through and put in our exclamation mark and $, and then go through and we can put then our lib display and uid.so. Now when we go through and look at our long listing, we can see now that's correctly set up with the permissions that we're going to need. Now we don't execute it ourselves, but then programs can make reference through to it. For this then to be included in our library cache so it can be used by programs, then we're going to have to do a little bit of extra work. So this is where the configuration files come in. Remember, we're still in the directory /etc/ld.so.conf.d. If we go through then and say vi plural, so anything that we add in, let's go through and then put it into the pluralsight.conf. And then we can go through and specify the path. And this is going to be USR, local, lib, and then pluralsight. So we add in the directory that we want to search for our modules. We can go through and then save our change. So having now included it within our library configuration, when we update the library cache, we'll be able to locate these files. Imagine though, if I was a developer, we probably want to have a less static location. So even though it shouldn't be set as default, I could look at the variable ld underscore library underscore path. As I say, it should be empty by default. If I populate this path, then we can go through and look for library modules within that path, so we can set the variable and then unset the variable when we want to return to the pre-configured locations. So this then allows developers to be able to have some control over their own environment. Now we've seen here that we've been able to add in our own shared module, a library file that will just have shared code that can be used by programs that need to reference it. But of course we've got to tell our programs about it. We've seen that we can change a configuration, but we now need to update the library cache. So we'll see that within the next clip.